license, which means that she actually gets money for everyone.
Oh, fantastic.
So I wanted to make sure. So make sure if you're going to get that it's a license. I learned that from an artist friend.
My mom's been making some for me, but they're not. They don't always fit that well.
Thanks, Mom. We'll just put it on the pile.
One of them was their old bed sheet from when I was a kid.
So that's weird.
It was weird. Another one is some dead fish that was a shirt that my dad used to wear when I was a kid. Recycling.
Nicola, I cannot unsee that, unpicture that.
I figured dead fish wasn't good for the debate either.
Thank you for keeping us safe.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah, we've been scrambling.
I get it. I do. I get it. Oh, breeze. Feels good.
Bit of airflow.
Airflow in here.
Hi.
You sit down here, sir. And you're going to be Or we could, if they're okay, we could start with Nicola and go back this way. You okay to start the first Nicola?
Sure, I can start.
So we'll just
Justin, moderator.
Monkey in the middle.
Make my job easy.
Oh, that we were speaking about?
Yeah, you too.
I'll have to look into it again because I haven't used them for a little while.
no one's coming back here.
Hello. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Have you met Nicola?
Yeah, we were just at the thing together. I'm sitting here. They're gonna go live in a minute. Yeah. Okay, thanks, bye.
Well, we do get the great view.
Sorry?
We do get the great view.
It is nice. It's have to not get distracted by it.
Sorry, guys.
I'm not used to natural light in these debates, so that's good.
Never used buttons before. My apologies.
Mike, do we need to press a button on here at all? No?
We never get up, right?
Okay. Thanks.
No, they'll have a camera. They have a camera.
We sit here and do our thing. Thank you. Which one? Thank you. Oh, is that tonight?
Welcome to the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce 2020 Provincial Election Candidates Debate. This is for the riding of Coquitlam, Maillardville. I'd first like to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Coquitlam peoples. Today we'll be hearing from our candidates from the riding of Coquitlam, Maillardville, about their party platforms and plan for our province. If you're watching live and have questions, please post them in the comments. Questions have been pre-submitted, and we will address additional questions if time permits. Rules and format. Well, first, I'd like to quickly go over these rules. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and the party's platform in an opening statement. After opening statements, candidates will be asked a combination of questions. These questions have been prepared by the Chamber of Commerce and submitted by the greater business community. We'll be asking our candidates questions until our time is up here today. Based on a random selection, one candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the selected question that I will ask before the floor is opened for an additional 4 minutes of debate. Once the question gets closed off, we'll move on to the next question. To finish off the debate tonight, candidates will be given 2 minutes for concluding statements. Candidates, are you ready? All right, today, Nicola's going to start. May you please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you very much for hosting tonight, and thank you to everyone who's watching. I am Nicola Sperling. I'm running for the BC Green Party. I'm running for the party because for too long we've accepted that there are only 2 parties to vote for in British Columbia, the BC Liberals or the BC NDP. And I believe it's time for change in this province. We have 2 parties upholding the status quo, and the BC Greens are different. I am different. And the reason for that will become clear, I believe, throughout this debate. But I want to be the change that I believe British Columbia needs. I want to support affordable housing. I want to support human rights, the environment, the economy, jobs. We need to have a strong government through this pandemic, and part of what I want to see in order to make that happen is a minority government situation, because I believe that collaboration is an important way to create good policy. And right now, in the last 3.5 years, we've seen collaboration between the NDP and the Greens, and even between the Greens and the BC Liberals. I think it's time to see more of that collaboration, and the only way we're going to get that is if we vote for the change we want to see, and that means a vote for the BC Greens to improve the amount of MLAs that we have in the legislature to grow our support. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena.
Thank you. I'm Selena Robinson, the BC NDP candidate for Coquitlam, Maillardville, and I too would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territories of the Coquitlam First Nation and the Coast Salish peoples. And I want to thank the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce for once again hosting us. Special thank you to Michael Hind and his staff, and also for the Chamber for being a great help in representing businesses here in the Tri-Cities. And they reached out to me on a regular basis, particularly through the pandemic, doing an outstanding job of representing the needs of businesses here. I was elected to Coquitlam City Council in 2008 and then again in 2011. And I was then elected to represent people in Victoria in 2013 and then again in 2017. And my goals in both of these roles has always been to make a difference in people's lives. And for the past 3.5 years, I've been working as part of John Horgan's government as the Minister for Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Minister responsible for TransLink. As a government, our focus has been on improving services, making life more affordable, and strengthening an economy that works for everyone. And then COVID hit, making everything for all of us so much more difficult. A global pandemic meant shifting to keep everyone safe and to plan for our recovery. And I'm so proud of British Columbians. We've been doing such an excellent job of keeping ourselves, our family members, our coworkers, our neighbors, our customers, and our community safe. And I'm proud of John Horgan and our government for doing what we need to do to keep everyone safe and to move forward towards recovery. We are investing more than $8 billion in services and supports to help people, help communities, and help businesses. We have achieved a great deal together, and there is so much more for us to do. Putting people at the center of public policy ensures that programs and services that we rely on are there for us when we need them. And we need to keep moving forward with what we started in 2017 on healthcare, mental health and addictions, housing, childcare, environmental protection, climate change, and infrastructure development. It's why I'm asking you to vote for me and re-elect me to represent you in Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Will?
Thank you very much. Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Je suis content d'être ici avec vous. Je suis le représentant pour les BC Liberals à Coquitlam, Maillardville. Good evening. I'm very proud to be here and very proud to be a Maillardian or a Maillardvillian, as it were. I'm very proud to be part of the BC Liberal team, but I'm also very disappointed, and the reason I stepped up to take on this challenge was because of the clear power grab pandemic election that is being put and thrust upon us. As a father of 5 with children in our schooling system in Coquitlam, and as the chair of the PAC, Parent Advisory Council, at 3 of the schools, Dr. Charles Best, Rochester Elementary, and Millard Middle, we all know that this pandemic election is coming into our schools where our kids are, where we've gone into this great expense to make people come into the polls in our schools, where we're precariously holding on to our kids going back into class and our families getting back to work. So I'm very disappointed about that, and that's why I've stepped up. I also stepped up because I believe that moving forward, this province needs a government that will have a vision that will put money back in and invest back in people, every people, and also in small business. That includes eliminating the PST for a year. That includes small business tax break down to 0. That includes investment in you and I and families like mine, and that's why I'm here to say that I'm prepared to step up and represent my family and your family in Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now that the candidates introduce themselves, I'll introduce myself as your moderator for the evening. My name is Justin Levine, and I'm a lawyer at Golby Law in Port Moody, and I practice business and real estate law. I think we're going to start it off with a large and open-ended question and narrow it down from there. So starting with Nicola again, what plans does your party have to both stimulate economic recovery and help tackle the significant amount of debt our province is incurring to help move through the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you for the question. I think what we need to work on is looking ahead to the future. I think this is something that both the BC Liberals and the BC NDP have failed on. And that means looking at industries that are going to carry us into the future, that are going to support people with good jobs, and that are going to provide us with economic growth as we move forward. Part of the issues that I've seen with the way that the current government has handled the economy is that they're investing in the economy of the past, in the fossil fuel industry. We've seen the BC NDP carry on the BC Liberal Party's legacy of investing in fossil fuel infrastructure and expanding it. We've seen them push LNG, push fracking, spend billions of dollars, over $10 billion on the Site C Dam, which is essentially just electricity that they needed for electrified fracking. This is not how we support our economy moving into the future. We need to look at renewable energy solutions. We need to look at tech jobs. We're going to see people losing their jobs because of automation, so we need to look at basic income supports. So these are the ways that I think that we can support people through this pandemic, but also make sure that we have a good economic recovery coming out of it as well.
All right, thank you. Now I'll open it up to the floor.
Thank you. Well, this COVID pandemic certainly threw everyone for a loop globally. And we need to remember that people are the economy. The economy doesn't exist independent of people. We are the economy. And that's why, as a government, we have been, until the writ was dropped, investing in people and making sure that they were safe, first and foremost, that they had access to childcare, because childcare is part of the economy, that transit kept running because people need to be able to get back and forth to work. But if people aren't healthy, and if they aren't safe, and if they aren't feeling safe, then we can't have an economy. So our priority is making sure that people have a sense of safety and knowing that healthcare is there for them. But let's be really clear that under the BC Liberals, when they were in government, the economy really was about working for the rich, for them. It was about making sure that those at the top benefited while everyone else struggled. Wages stagnated. They took money out of hydro and ICBC in order to, and they gave rich people a tax break. They increased MSP for the rest of us. They increased ICBC rates for the rest of us. Hydro was up 87%. They introduced bridge tolls. It made it much more difficult for average British Columbians. And they would do that again. I do not hesitate to think for a second that they wouldn't do that again. Us, on the other hand, the New Democrats, We got rid of MSP. We were the last province to get rid of MSP. Everybody else got rid of it, but we still had it. Flat tax. We got rid of the tolls. It was unfair. It was an unfair burden to the people of the Tri-Cities, and it was an unfair burden to the people in Surrey. We're turning ICBC around. Lower rates by 20% come this May. We're fixing that dumpster fire that they created. Wages went up 17% in just 3 years. We need to do a lot more, and I look forward to getting back to work after this election.
Thank you. So I find it difficult to believe that the NDP have decided that safety is first when they've thrown us into an election. This is clearly not about safety. The government is shut down and clearly it was preparing for an election. So government wasn't working with the other parties and trying to continue to keep us safe. It was getting ready for this election. And now we're in this election and everything's halted. That's not about safety. And now we're going to have to count ballots for 2 weeks after and delay getting people back, the government back together. This is not about safety. And, you know, I'm sorry, but the ICBC, my son, who's 17, just bought his first car. He's very proud. He works down on Schoolhouse at the Cactus Club. Works hard, great kid, real responsible. Buys a new car, and if he wants to insure it himself, the insurance is more than the price of the car. And he's got a nice car. So this story about ICBC being improved is false. It's not true. So and back to your original question, we want to invest in people. We want people to have a break from PST for a year so they can spend that money how they choose. We didn't wait like the NDP did for an election call to announce that all of a sudden there's $1,000 of taxpayer money ready for you if you give us our vote. I think that's disingenuous. These are the reasons why we're in a pandemic election. I am disappointed that these are the policies that are now being rolled out when they could have been done during the time that everybody was working together in Victoria. So now we want to invest where we can, and that is in people, in their money, more money in their pockets, more money to invest in small business. We're getting the small business tax to zero. There's a plan, and that's not a plan that has always perpetrated, always the same story. The rich people. Well, I'm here to tell you I'm not rich, and I don't have many rich friends with yachts or whatever it is. We are real people that need real support now. And that's what we're offering.
So I think what Will's missing here is the point that we consulted with small business, and they were really clear that what they would really value are grants, and that's exactly what's rolling out. The grants are now available for application because that's what they said would really make a difference. And in fact, reducing the PST is going to blow the biggest hole in a budget that we've ever seen, but it really won't benefit people who need it. I was talking to a parent who takes their kids to school. She was just out picking up her 3 kids, and I asked her about what would make a difference, PST or some money in her pocket, because she said she did the math. She figures she spends about $25 a month on PST, that would be her savings, that would be in her pocket. Whereas $1,000, what was that going to do for her? That was going to bring her the ability to get her kids raincoats and rubber boots that she's been delaying doing, getting haircuts. She's been delaying getting her kids haircuts because she says things are really tight. Having that money is going to make a real difference for her. And the truth is, we did give money to people from the get-go so that people had cash in their pockets to help things when it was hardest during the pandemic.
I think Nicola wanted to chime in on that.
Yes, well, I would just like to add to what Selena is saying here, which is that a PST cut is not the appropriate solution. A PST and tax in general, as long as it's used progressively, is a fantastic way of funding social services. And during this pandemic, we need social services, we need people to be supported, and we need equitable support. PST cuts support everyone across the board. They don't support lower income people more than they support rich people. So we really need to make sure that we have taxes, that they're handled progressively, so that we can see a more equitable solution to this pandemic, more equitable support for people throughout this pandemic. And I also think that when it comes back to the previous question of the economy, like I said before, we need to make sure that we're thinking ahead. We need to not be looking at Band-Aid solutions. Band-Aid solutions will get us through the pandemic, but they won't carry us forward into a prosperous future. So looking ahead at how we can invest in industries of the future and support people. And one of the big planks in the BC Green Party's platform is education. It's about making sure people have the ability to access the education that they need to transition careers, that we have basic income support so that people have the ability to fall back on that as they pursue other opportunities. And that is, I think, what's missing from both the NDP and the BC Liberal Party's platform.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Now, Will, I want to give you a chance to answer, but I want to do that by asking a question out of order, mind you. So thinking of taxes like the employer, that payroll employer health tax, your party's platform to pause and then bring back at a reduced rate PST. What is your party's, all of you starting with Will, what are your party's tax plans to lessen the burden on businesses post-pandemic, if there will ever be such a thing?
Right, and thank you for the question. The issue is exactly that. What is post-pandemic? What does it look like? How do we invest today? First of all, again, everyone on this stage will say the same. People need to stay safe. We need to all stay safe. We need to make sure that we get through this safely, and we need to make sure that people have dignity while they're getting through this. So we need to support people through the pandemic. The break for a year in PST allows people to invest and spend in the community. It will support people and lower their costs on all kinds of things that they're buying. It's an automatic savings for people of all backgrounds. So that's part A. In Austin Heights, in our community, there are lots of small businesses, and they're hanging on. There's lots of problems, there were for sure, and it's not better. We have closing businesses constantly, and people precariously holding on to their business. We need to lower that tax down to zero, so these businesses can continue and just get through this next wave. Those small businesses in our community are going to see such an influx of new people coming into and housing is growing. There's new projects everywhere you go. When you're going through the neighborhood, there's new builds, there's new energy, there's going to be new money. These small businesses need to survive. So, for example, when you rezone Austin Heights, as the city did, you'll have people like me and Ed's, an institution, an absolute institution. We've all gone there after Little League or after soccer or with our families, and we have for generations. And they are now sitting on a land property tax that has exploded because of the change in the zoning. And so the city has a plan and a proposal, and there was no support coming from the provincial government. And that is now where we're at with these small businesses need that support. We need to invest in them now, and the backbone of our economy, to get through this so that they're still around when it's time for them to grow.
Thank you. Want to comment on the taxation aspect?
Well, we heard today from Andrew Wilkinson that he's planning to do some sort of tax reform, but won't share that with us until after the election. And we've seen this before. We've seen this play before. So after the election, you find out that they're canceling taxes on the richest folks, those that make more than $220,000 a year. Certainly, Andrew Wilkinson and the BC Liberals didn't support that additional tax rate that we brought forward. So he's happy to cancel those. But the reality is they wind up reducing services. People need to know that health care is there for them. They need to know that the teachers that the BC Liberals fought with for 16 years, the ones that we have had to hire in order to educate our children, are there for the long term. But when he's proposing to review taxes after the election, what that tells me is he doesn't have a plan, or he does have a plan, and his intent is to cut services, because your taxes pay for services. And right now is not the time to cut services. People need services. Our seniors need services. Let's remember what happened under the BC Liberals. They allowed contract flipping. That meant that our care aides had to work at 2 and 3 different places in order to make a decent wage to care for their families. And what did that do during COVID? What did that do during the pandemic? It meant that people were getting sick. It meant that workers were getting sick. The frontline workers, the people we were cheering for at 7 p.m. were getting sick. And that's because of the contract flipping that the BC Liberals did, the privatization actions that they took while they were in government for 16 years. And that has had serious consequences. And we are still fixing the mess that they left behind.
Thank you very much. Nicola?
Well, I mean, the BC Liberals certainly left quite the mess. And I want to touch on one of Selena's points, which is that the BC NDP have supported teachers, because in 2017 they ran on a platform of increasing funding for education by 1%. The BC Liberals offered nothing in terms of extra support for funding for education. The BC Green Party ran on a platform of increasing support for education, funding for education by 20%. And I think that is part of the issue. We need these taxes, like Selena mentioned, to support social services, but the issue is that they're not doing enough. The teachers that she claims to support, that the BC NDP claimed to support, were being pushed aside by the BC Liberal government. They were the BC Liberals were fighting them on class size and composition, but then we saw the BC NDP do the exact same thing, fighting teachers on class size and composition. So we really need to increase funding for education. This is a huge piece of the BC Green Party's platform, and we're looking not just at increased funding for education, but at expanding education, at funding early childhood education. That would mean from ages 4 to 5 having free early childhood education 25 hours a week, and for children that are younger than that having free childcare. The BC NDP promised $10 a day childcare back in 2017. We still haven't seen that come to fruition, whereas the BC Green Party has been offering free childcare. We haven't been fighting the NDP on this. We have been pushing for affordable childcare, and that's something that we would like to see if we're elected.
Thank you very much.
So can I?
Yeah, please.
So around just in the child care piece, we've announced very clearly, and we have a plan and a solid plan to support $10 a day child care for people of a certain bracket, and then and make it affordable so that people can have the child care. Now, as a father of 5 who's only got one left in child care, it's too bad that didn't come along a little earlier, but here we are. Now we can make a difference, and the BC Liberal Party plans to do that very thing. The announcements are clear. Let's be straight here. There's investment in healthcare. There's investment in Richmond. There's investment in Surrey for growth of institutions in healthcare. There's also, a development of infrastructure pieces. Infrastructure pieces that will be properly bid on and not just doled off to big unions and for them to be cozied with the NDP.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you here because the original question, just to go back, was talking about taxation. Now, what is your party's plan for taxation? We're moving around a little bit here, but I think we're getting sidetracked.
Yeah, well, that's fair, but the suggestion that if there's comments made, I'm going to want to respond, right? So, in terms of teachers, the teachers sat up. My wife is a kindergarten teacher. We have lived through the leadership of the NDP vis-a-vis the teachers. Ask teachers today if they're excited about an election during a pandemic in the very schools where there's teaching. They're not. So this story that the NDP will want to continue to perpetuate about how there was a toll on the bridge, how these things are stories from the past that are being used as the boogeyman today, where in fact we. One final point: since the pandemic began, I've been working day and night in the long-term care sector and with seniors. And I don't believe that Adrian Dix would agree with the characterization that the privatization of some long-term care is the reason that we have death in long-term care.
I think we're going to change gears here and see if we can get, sorry Selena, I understand you want to rebut that point, but I want to change gears here and see if we can drill back into some specific questions the community is looking for answers on. So I heard a lot about childcare, education, schools, and that one, so let's move to a childcare question. In the recent federal throne speech, there was a general proposal towards a comprehensive Canada-wide childcare early education initiative to assist parents with return to labor force and making childcare more affordable. Given the pre-pandemic labor shortages many businesses were already facing in BC, seems like a needed program. But without a doubt, this crosses over into provincial jurisdiction. How will your government improve access to childcare and hopefully reduce fees, to introduce measures possibly to strengthen private or nonprofit childcare options? And this is to Selena.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm really grateful for this question because it's one that we've been working very diligently on and our goal towards a $10 a day childcare. And so just I think it's important to note that just in the Tri-Cities alone, we have 306 new spaces since we formed government, more than $10.4 million invested in childcare fee reduction initiative, childcare operating funds, putting more than $6 million in the pockets of parents. So I think that's really important to note that we've taken significant action. The BC Liberals had 16 years to get something up and running, and they failed. In fact, their childcare critic, was somebody who said, "Oh, we already have universal affordable childcare. It's called MUM." And that, to me, really demonstrated how poorly BC Liberals thought about childcare. And I have to say, it's refreshing to finally see them come around and recognize that it's a valuable economic driver for families. We want to protect childcare in law. We're going to bring $10 a day, more $10 a day to families. More spaces. We will exceed our target of 22,000 new childcare spaces by expanding our capital program. We also want to put it into the Ministry of Education because we need to recognize, and I know that parents already recognize this, that your child starts learning from the get-go, and I know that Will recognizes that. He has 5 of them. But again, childcare is not babysitting. It is a very professional calling. And it requires a professional approach and a professional attitude. Making sure that we have more convenient childcare options for working parents. Not all parents work 9 to 5. We need to make sure that we have round-the-clock availability for those frontline workers who struggled so much during the pandemic. We also need to train so that we can keep more early learning educators. We need to make sure that they're a well-supported profession, that are properly, continue to be properly licensed and acknowledged and recognized for their work, and we need to value it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open the floor. But anybody have any comments on what Selena was saying?
So I think I touched on this before. I think that the NDP and the BC Liberals obviously recognize, and I'm glad to see the BC Liberals coming around on this, that early childhood education and childcare is extremely important. However, what we've seen is the BC NDP has not followed through on their commitment to $10 a day childcare. They're working on it in theory, but we haven't really seen that come to fruition. They've blamed the BC Green Party for getting in the way when the reality is that we have supported free childcare. Like I said before, free childcare for children under the age of 4. For children of the age of 4 to 5, we're looking at having 25 hours a week of early childhood education available to them for free. And this all requires investments in childcare. The 1% increase that the BC NDP proposed in 2017 was not enough. And the 20% increase that the BC Greens are proposing and we're proposing in 2017 is really what we need to look at in terms of having proper supports for education. And it's really important to remember that education is one of the most important things that we can invest in. This is the future of our province. Our children are our future, and if we're not investing properly in them, then we're not investing properly in our future. Thank you.
My children and your children are the reason I'm sitting here today. The reason that I've thrown my hat in the ring, as they say. I firmly believe that this plan, which is an actual plan, of $1.1 billion to invest in $10 a day daycare for families whose incomes are up to $65,000, $20 a day for families who are income up to $90,000, and $30 a day for those above or up to $125,000. So that's a plan that would start immediately, supporting our industry, the childcare industry, which, as a parent that, got on wait lists long ahead of time because you had to get on wait lists long ahead of time, it's essential that we get this right. People are struggling, and we, just as parent cohorts get together and trade off and pick up and drop off and help each other, we find solutions. Well, there needs to be more solutions readily available, and it needs to be especially for our young parents who want to and need to get back to work. Because often the burden on the parent, like it or not, is going to fall on the female. So we need to make sure that this is going to be supporting those women getting back into the workforce. And having childcare that is affordable and available is extremely important. Also, when you're looking for childcare, it needs to be professional. So I think a lot of the points that Ms. Robinson said are shared, very, very much so. This has to be an industry that is supported, that has professionals, that is taken seriously, and that has the proper infrastructure to operate.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to respond. And Mr. Davis is right. People are struggling. And I'm sorry that he's had to struggle, because if the BC Liberals had invested in childcare when they were in power, then perhaps his family might have had a different outcome in terms of not having to be put on lists and lists and lists and waiting for childcare. The BC Liberals, frankly, ignored it for a long, long time. We've created childcare spaces at the fastest pace in this province's history. We funded 20,000 new childcare spaces in just 2 years, and 32,000 families are now receiving $10 a day or less childcare. We're committed to a $10 a day plan, and it's a 10-year plan. You have to train people to be to have enough space. You have to build it over time, and we've started it, and we cannot let the momentum go. We have to keep moving forward on this. It's absolutely critical to getting our economy moving, and it's absolutely critical to making sure that families have what they need to keep their children safe.
Okay, I guess playing off of childcare, my opinion, going hand in hand with that to a degree, is housing affordability. So, we have the speculation tax, foreign home buyers tax. They remained in place. Allegedly have slowed the demand and ballooning house prices. So we're told. They don't seem to be sufficient solutions on housing affordability, more cooling effects. Apart from taxation, what proposals does your party have to increase supply for both buying and renting, as well as helping first-time purchasers climb up that property ladder? And I believe this question's over to Will.
Well, thank you. Affordability is, of course, in the Lower Mainland. In our riding is a very, very serious ongoing riddle, and also one that needs to be addressed and firmly. So the support for young families getting into affordable housing will come through investment in building new affordable housing, making places, developing properties and spaces that include properties that are affordable for these families that can't afford this kind of the high cost of getting into the market as an owner. As renters, we need to make sure that the relationship between renter and owner is an equitable one. I know, for example, there's a difficult situation in Coquitlam where there's lots of basement suites that could be really helpers for people, and in some cases, the renters are ruling the roost in these homes. And in one case specifically, there's a home that is rented out, and the basement suite has a smoker, and the smoker was told not to smoke. The smoker continues to do so and can't be evicted. So the renters, the people that own the property, had to actually get up and move. They don't live in their own home because their son has asthma. So these kinds of relationships need to be changed. There needs to be a better opportunity for people to, who start developing their new homes, have the opportunity to rent these suites and make it so that it's affordable for both owner and renter.
Got to pause for a second and say a well-drafted contract would have avoided that smoking dispute. Any other follow-up points on that, Selena?
Oh yeah, I have a whole list. Housing affordability has been the biggest problem for a long time. It didn't just appear overnight. This has been years in the making, and it was years in the making under the BC Liberals. They absolutely ignored the housing crisis. They ignored speculation on the for detached homes, and detached homes went up $600,000. That's a ridiculous amount under the BC Liberal watch, and they really didn't. They didn't do anything. They allowed huge rent hikes, higher than inflation. They're promising now to cancel the speculation tax. And to me, which I find absolutely appalling, especially given that it's starting to work. We have 11,000 more condos, more homes available to renters because of the speculation tax. And British Columbians aren't the ones who have to pay it. It's speculators and offshore money that's paying it. But they would cancel that. To me, that's the wrong direction to go. We capped rent increases at inflation, and we're going to make that permanent. We are on track for 58,000 more homes, housing starts over 5 years than the BC Liberals predicted under their plan. So we actually see more housing starts. We're building 25,000 homes that are either open or under construction or in the development permitting process that are coming online, that are affordable homes, social housing for women fleeing violence, for people who are formerly homeless, seniors and families on fixed incomes. Those are all happening as we speak. There's absolutely more for us to do, and there's a couple things I want to point to in our platform. One is we are removing the parking minimums when there is a housing built near SkyTrain, near transit stations. There's no reason to have that much parking required that local governments often require, and so we're removing that. We're also fixing the development permitting process. It is cumbersome, it is really challenged, and it takes a very long time to get permits. We were just talking about that earlier, and it shouldn't be that way. So we're working together and we're working collaboratively with the development community. We're working with local governments. We're working with all partners in the housing sector to make sure that there's that we can drive down
Thank
the
you very
cost
much,
of
Selena.
housing.
Nicola?
Yes, so housing affordability is something that's really important to me. I ran in 2018 for City Council in Coquitlam because I saw that housing affordability was something that was not being tackled appropriately. And I believe it needs to be addressed at both the provincial level and a municipal level. But here today I'm running for provincial elections, so I'm going to talk about addressing it from a provincial level. And our plan is that in 2030, we would like to see everyone be able to afford the house that they're living in. And we're specifically looking at renters. 43% of renters are spending more than 30% of their income on rent. That's 250,000 British Columbians. So we're looking at low-income and moderate-income households that are spending more than 30% of their income on rent, and we're looking at providing them with grants in order to support them. We're also very much supportive of some of the changes that the BC NDP have brought into that have put policy in place for. The BC Greens helped, in fact, with putting those policies in place that create supports for lower income people, that open up housing for lower income people. And we need to be able to free up a lot of this empty space that investors are putting their money into. There are people who are outside of British Columbia investing in properties here in British Columbia, and those properties sit empty, even despite that tax. So we need to look at how we can further those kinds of initiatives that the BC Greens and the BC NDP have worked on over the last 3.5 years.
If I may.
You got 10 seconds.
10 seconds. Well, so just to be clear, now the housing minister happens to be sitting to my left here, and the housing the units that were projected were 114,000 that were going to be built. So far, we're below 3,000 built, and 114,000 units would take forever. Like it's just,
I think
it's
forever
a
is a bit of
projection.
speculation.
Well,
But I
it's
think we're
just
going to move on to a different question.
And at 3,000 units.
Thank you, Will. I think we're going to move on to a different
in the
question.
90s was the high point.
And
of
that
building.
question is going to be ICBC, on Crown Corporations and ICBC. Due to the alleged mismanagement of ICBC, I believe the word dumpster fire was thrown around from time to time. There's an argument that allowing private companies to enter the market would decrease the cost of insurance, presumably, this is the part that I think most misses out, presumably for the same insurance product. So, what does your party do, or what are your party's plans to step in and change the landscape of a Crown corporation like ICBC? And this is going to start with Nicola.
Sure. So I think in general, the party's been quite supportive of changes that the BC NDP have brought into place. The BC Liberals really mismanaged ICBC. That's why the dumpster fire word gets thrown around all the time. And I am also personally pleased with some of the changes that have come into play. At the same time, like Will mentioned earlier, we've seen issues for younger drivers. And I'm going to go off script a little bit from what the party's platform might be, because my personal opinion is that we still have work to do. We still need to address the high cost of insurance for younger folks. And we also need to make sure that ICBC is not affecting people negatively if they have a claim. The fact that we can't bring in lawyers anymore is a concern for me personally, because I've been through the process. I've been in collisions where other people have hit me and where ICBC has tried to provide me with a very minimal amount of money in return. despite the fact that I've been injured and despite the fact that my vehicle was worth a lot more than they offered me. So these are the kinds of things that when you can't get a lawyer involved, you need to make sure that ICBC is being properly managed. And throughout the years of the BC Liberals, we've seen mismanagement. I'm not entirely convinced that that has changed significantly under the BC NDP. So I don't have an answer in terms of the exact course forward, but I do want to be careful around some of the changes that the BC NDP have brought into place.
Selena?
Thank you. People have been paying too much for car insurance for too long, but let's be really clear. It was Andrew Wilkinson and the BC Liberals that raided ICBC to pay for tax cuts that they gave to the wealthy folks. They had to fill their budget with something, so they took money from ICBC. That's $1.2 billion that they took out of that Crown Corporation while hiking car insurance by 36%. And in 2014, they hid recommendations from an independent report that would have saved people money. And they're still making us pay. And this summer, they voted against our plan to reduce ICBC rates by 20%, about $400. They voted against our law to prevent governments from raiding ICBC. And right now, from what we can tell, Andrew Wilkinson would cancel our 20% rate cut and would make everyone pay more. And really, we have this enhanced care model that's really about getting lawyers, no offense to you, but getting lawyers out of the system, because the cost for lawyers and the experts is astronomical. And what people really need, if they're in a car accident, they need to know that they're going to be able to get their physio. They need to know that they're going to be able to get their chiropractors. They need to know that they're going to have care so that they could heal from their accident. And that's what this model is about. It's being it will be implemented in May of 2021, and we're going to see the average savings of about $400 per driver.
So it's clear that I think off the top I told you that my son's insurance would have been that we not waited more than the cost of his car. So that is just unacceptable. This can't be possible. At the very age that people need the most money, they're putting it all back into this insurance. So the plan here is to break the monopoly, the ICBC monopoly, and open this up to private market. And we give drivers the choice of accident benefits, coverage from bodily harm, and injury from either the private market or ICBC. So this is just breaking the monopoly and opening it up. There's also the opportunity for all new drivers to get a credit for 2 years, and that would increase to 4 years if they go through the driver's ed course. Those are real changes that would make it more affordable for ICBC for all drivers, especially our young people.
Selena?
So I think what I would encourage Mr. Davis to do is to check out the folks in Alberta and in Ontario and see how that's working for them. It's actually much more expensive as a driver. And I can recall my son who was driving in Ontario. He got a car. He was looking to do some work. He needed a car in order to get to his work. But the cost for finding insurance when you're a young male driver is next to impossible. And he was shopping around and could not find insurers, and when he could, it was absolutely ridiculous. Here with ICBC, we make sure that everyone can access the insurance that they need.
A follow-up question for Will. Being the only party, not to pick on you, but being the only party on stage that supports privatization, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong. My question is on Strata Insurance. We're hearing in the news a lot about Strata Insurance, which would be private industry. What I'm not hearing is that story involving a reduction in costs year over year. Not that we can compare it to a Crown Corporation, but I was wondering if you could differentiate what's going on in the Strata condo market insurance and how that would apply to privatization, to privatizing car insurance.
Well, first of all, the cost of Strata Insurance has happened. The skyrocketing cost has happened during this NDP government. That's a fact. The difference here is that the Crown Corporation will be part of the system in the car insurance, in ICBC. There's still going to be a player involved, and they will have to compete with the others to provide the best possible prices. It's just opening the market for the competition will make this more competitive and make people have the choice. That's the key, giving people the choice.
Thank you. Any follow-ups on that?
Could I? Yeah.
Please.
So in the Strata insurance situation right now, that is a free market, and there's technically, I suppose, choice, but there's very limited choice. And so as a result, what we're seeing is very, very expensive Strata Insurance because there's not a lot in the market. Now we've made we've taken initial steps with some advice from the Financial Services Authority, using their recommendations to limit some of the, open up the opportunities for more, a better balance in that market. But I think what I'm hearing is you're arguing, and the BC Liberals are arguing, to privatize car insurance, but don't really acknowledge that in the private sector, what we're seeing is that it doesn't always work. That when you privatize, it actually can get very, very expensive. In fact, one of the things that we're starting to look at is, do we look at making a public product available around Strata Insurance, which is what Saskatchewan has. So I agree with our moderator's question.
All right, thank you. I'll move on to a big topic here, the global climate emergency, which I believe is the new way to say climate change. Debates surrounding pipelines, exporting raw materials, we got Site C, we got LNG. What's your party's stance on energy projects, and what do you see as the appropriate response to the climate emergency? And I believe this question starts off with Selena, is that right?
Sure, if you say so. So we've taken bold steps, and I will give acknowledgement certainly to Andrew Weaver and his work in working with George Heyman to put together Clean BC, which is a whole package looking at how do we reduce our emissions as a province, looking at all of the elements of our industries, of our activities, of the way we build things, the way we use transportation. How do we make sure that we can drive down those emissions? And the fact that Andrew Weaver signed off and is pleased with it, I think, was quite an accomplishment. And it is one of the things that I'm proudest of as a government, that we've been able to work together to make sure that we can find the balance and make sure that everything fits within our commitments on driving down our GHG emissions.
Will?
So the BC Liberals were the ones that introduced the carbon tax originally in this province, and a carbon tax that was used often to move forward on the federal carbon tax. So the investment in industry, and the investment in industry doing it cleaner every day, and taking into account the environment, but exploiting our resources, has always been a part of the economy of British Columbia. So we need to make sure that we continue to invest in those. This, Trans Mountain will get built. The projects, the forestry industry needs so much support, and they should be getting it. But this can be done with a conscious effort to do this as a green initiative, to do it with the environment first. Everyone's getting to that point. We saw new plants opening federally again that are for electric cars. We support these kinds of these initiatives to move our industry towards a better record on the environment, and making these things as clean as we can while supporting those industries.
Thank you. Nicola?
Yes, I don't necessarily want to even address the BC Liberals' track record on the environment. It's absolutely appalling. But then you have the BC NDP coming in for the last 3.5 years and arguably have made it even worse. Clean BC is an accomplishment that the BC NDP and the BC Green Party worked together on. But other than that, the deflection that I saw from Selena Robinson does not go unnoticed by me, because she completely ignored the question, which was around fossil fuel industries. And when you look at what the BC NDP has supported, we've seen a 79% increase in fossil fuel subsidies coming from the BC NDP over the Christy Clark government. And we've seen support for LNG, support for fracking. We've seen Site C, which is an awful environmental disaster, as well as just a huge waste of taxpayer money. And the only reason it's being constructed is to power the LNG industry, to power electrified fracking. And then we see the BC NDP increase the speed of old growth logging over the BC Liberals. And that's, again, awful for our environment. We need these old growth forests. We need to be logging. We need to support the forestry industry, but we need to be logging second growth forests. So the BC NDP's track record on the environment is absolutely horrendous.
Thank you. Well, Clean BC currently sets a target of reducing emissions by 40% by 2030, and it is all of those things are considered in that.
But that's not going to happen under this
Additionally, we'll
plan.
pass legislation requiring us to reach net zero by 2050. We're also investing in carbon capture technology, which is a new technology that helps actually pull it out of the atmosphere to help us get there. So that's, I think, pretty exciting and innovative work. And we're requiring greener buildings because our buildings emit tremendous amounts of GHG emissions, and that's a part of it. And everything together, and it can't be the economy versus the environment or climate change. It can't be one versus the other. We can't be saying, I'll accept one investment and compromise the environment, but no, we can't do it because it's going to result in poverty. Because it does impact on poverty. It's about holding on to both. And that's, I think, the real challenge here. And I'm very proud of the fact that we've been able to do that. We're able to hold on to both, recognizing that it's going to be some time before we can transition fully. And we need to make sure that we invest in the right tools in the right ways. We need to electrify all of our buses. We need to electrify and get off of diesel. There are northern communities that are using diesel still. And so electrification is very significant. Site C will help us to do that. Investing in electric buses, making sure that all of our transit fleet is completely electric. Building out to Langley now, making sure that we have SkyTrain, getting people out of their cars. All of this feeds into that. But we need to make sure that we're monitoring all of it, and then we need to, of course, hold ourselves accountable, which is why we're putting it in legislation.
Nicola, I think that was directed directly at you.
Yes, so I hear Selena talking about the fact that we need to protect jobs. I know that the BC NDP, I would hope that the BC NDP is committed to protecting jobs. Investing in increasing fossil fuel industries is not the way to do that. This is a sunset industry. Clearly we can't get rid of fossil fuels now. This isn't going to end overnight, but we don't need to be expanding these industries. The way to protect jobs is to invest in industries of the future. I spoke about that earlier. Investing in renewable energies, investing in tech industries. These are the kinds of industries that are going to carry us into the future, that are going to keep British Columbia prosperous into the future. And when it comes to Clean BC, I believe that this is a good plan. But when the BC NDP set targets for emissions reductions, it needs to be action that's taken. They can't just be words. The BC NDP talk about how in 2050 we're going to have these reductions in GHG emissions, but then they go ahead and invest in fracking and LNG in projects that are going to mean that those emissions targets won't be met. And the BC NDP aren't going to be accountable for making sure that they're met. They're not going to be in government for the next 30 years. We know that this government swings back and forth. They might win this election, but they're not going to be in government for 30 years to oversee this, and they don't have a plan in place to get us there.
I'll just say real quickly that it seems to me that that coalition, Green NDP coalition, had a lot more work to do. They had another year that they could have accomplished a lot of that, yet here we are at a pandemic election.
All right, I want to turn to a question that I had at the beginning, but we got a little off track here. This is kind of going back to the economy and small businesses. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the feds, the federal government, provided in my opinion, a substantial amount of financial income support. And income support programs for those who lost all or a large portion of their incomes due to the reactions in the pandemic itself. If your party forms the government, what specific changes would you lobby the federal government for to benefit the province of British Columbia? And this is starting with you, Will.
Well, thank you for that. The federal government did step up and did do lots to support many of us, many businesses and individuals through this pandemic. I think what the partnership with the government needs to be one that includes a lot of planning and investment in infrastructure, in big pieces that we can build to grow the economy, to answer issues and problems within our communities that include the rebuild, build a bridge, and get rid of the tunnel. It includes big pieces that I'd love to see on the Burnett interchange I know many of us struggle with that whole interchange and really are disappointed that that piece is still undone. It's still a project that doesn't get completed. It was done. It was supposed to be done with the new bridge, and it's sitting there, ready for development. And I'd say, let's get that money, the federal money, to support those projects. Let's get those people back to work. Those small business contractors that work in development. Let's get them investing in our growth, in our builds, and see some of that money go to our small businesses that work in those industries.
Thank you. Nicola?
Yes, so I think one of the big pieces that we need here is supports for people through this pandemic, obviously. And I think one of the ways that we support people through the pandemic is to provide them with assistance. We've seen that happen through CERB, for instance, but when you have all sorts of different social services being provided and administered by all sorts of different departments, you see huge administrative costs. One of the ways that we can really tackle this is by having a basic income in place. And I've mentioned this before, where we need to have some kind of basic income that supports people, not just through this pandemic, but also as our economy changes, as people's jobs change. And that can take the place of programs such as EI, such as CERB, and roll everything into one, cut those administrative costs down, and make sure that we're seeing a more equitable solution where people who are making more money are investing more into these services than people who are making less money. And that's how we view progressive taxation, as a way of paying for basic income. And I would like to see the federal government work with the provinces, to make that happen.
Selena?
Thank you. So I've put together a wish list, a federal government wish list, while I was listening to my colleagues here. So the first thing is that they need to fix their rent support for business that they designed. It's been flawed from the get-go. As a province, we matched it because that was a requirement, but it's their program. It's not working. They need to listen to the folks on the ground, and they need to fix it. So that would be my first order of business. The second one would be about infrastructure. They need to move money faster. They take a very long time to move money out the door. People need work now, and we need to move faster on that. And it's been a frustration of mine in terms of getting them to sign off on projects. The third one, and they've just announced it, is about their child care investments. I think they need to move quickly on that. We have an opportunity here to make it to do more faster. I think there's real significant recognition about how important childcare is to the economy. Another one is GST off of rental housing. They promised that a couple elections ago. It hasn't materialized. This is an investment in housing to get purpose-built rentals to the market. It's desperately needed. It will make a huge difference. They've been asking for it for a very long time. It's within their realm, and they have committed to it, and they haven't seen it yet. We need to get that going as well.
All right. Any rebuttals or comments from anybody? Can move on to the next question.
Well, I'd say that the federal government is going to be there and is working. The plan is clear. They can work with us on infrastructure. They should be working, and we will be working with them on job creation, on supporting people getting back into the economy, on supporting new innovations and technologies that will allow a growing economy in those industries. And I think it's really important that we see the opportunity for those infrastructure pieces and the pipeline to happen, so that we can grow further revenues. It's going to be about jobs, and it's going to be about investing in people and getting people back to work. That's what's going to make us come out of this pandemic, after we're through it safely, into a sustainable future.
Nicola had a
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say I do agree with much of Selena Robinson's list. And when it comes to investments, I also agree that we can invest in infrastructure. I think that that's a great way of getting people back to work. But unlike Will, I don't believe that that is investing in pipelines. Pipelines create a significant amount of jobs for a very short amount of time. We want to create significant amounts of jobs that are going to carry us forward into the future. So having electrified public transit, for instance, would be a type of transportation option, a type of infrastructure investment that I could get behind supporting as a way of creating jobs and seeing some federal money go into that as well.
I apologize, Selena, but I'm going to bounce that back to Will really quick.
Okay.
So, you know, in terms of affordability and helping those get to the middle class and thrive, we are going to see lots of people coming out of the workforce. We're going to see new Canadians coming into the workforce. By 2029, I believe it is, 27% of the workforce will be a new Canadian. We need to support immigration and support the new Canadians with jobs and good jobs. We also should see investments and support in the long-term care sector. What happened in long-term care is not a one-tone story, as was suggested earlier. It's multiple things, and we're going to need to create new housing for seniors. We're going to need to train people to work on in the industry. We've got to make long-term care a destination, a place for someone to have a career. Currently, the average age in that industry is 49 years old. We're going to need new workers in that industry. We're going to need to invest in them.
Thank you.
And
Will.
that is a good job.
Throw 30 seconds up and give it to Selena.
So I'm listening very carefully to what Mr. Davis is saying, and I agree with him, because that's exactly what's in our platform, and all they have is a PST cut to stimulate the economy. We need to make sure that we are investing in infrastructure. We have that in our plan. We have to make sure that we are training people in high-demand fields like healthcare and childcare. That's in our plan. 7,000 new family-supporting healthcare jobs to fight the pandemic. That's in our plan. And what's in the BC Liberals plan? That's eliminating PST for a year, and then the second year having it at 3%. That's not in their plan. That's in our plan.
Our plan includes a strategy for seniors, including keeping them supported and at home as long as possible, but also investing in long-term care and supporting the growth of that sector.
Thank you.
And that is not a plan. There's many plans from the NDP that say
10-year
plan. 10-year plans are...
All right, we're going to move it on. This question I didn't make up, but it's one of my favorite questions to ask because of my frustration of party discipline in politics in Canada. You represent the community you're voted to elect. Successful in this election, what's your first priority to serve your community?
Sir, can you repeat the question? So I didn't.
If successful in this election, what would be your first priority to achieve for this community? Coquitlam, Maillardville. And that was Will, so we're starting off with Nicola.
So I want to come back to what we spoke about before, which is education. I truly believe that investing in education is investing in our future. And this is community specific in that education is something that's needed across the province. So one of the first things that I would like to address is funding for education, making sure that we see large increases in education funding, that we see early childhood education being expanded, that we see better child care. These are issues that are across the province, but I still believe that these are the most important issues here at home in Coquitlam, Maillardville, and those are going to be some of my top priorities moving into our future government, which will hopefully include the BC Greens.
Thank you. Selena.
Thank you. Housing. I think it is still, the most pressing issue, making sure that we're able to work together with our local government partners, making sure that we're working with the development community, making sure that we're working with our federal partners. This is an all-hands-on-deck issue, and we need to make sure that we have the wide range of housing that people need. Coquitlam Maillardville is primarily a suburban designed community, mostly single-family housing, a handful of duplexes, a couple of apartments, but really for the most part, it's single-family housing. It's not, it doesn't have the variety and the diversity of housing that meets the needs of a broad community. It doesn't have enough places for folks to downsize, for example. It doesn't have enough family housing that is affordable. It doesn't have enough seniors housing. So making sure that we have the variety of housing to meet all kinds of income levels so that we have supporting our diverse community is one of the challenges I think we have in Coquitlam Maillardville.
And Will.
Well, I will remind everybody that we're in the middle of a pandemic, so safety. I would immediately, that's job one, and it should be the job that's happening right now. I think that the possibility, the potential of a second wave is real. The potential of, God forbid, this happening, again, as we see in other parts of the world. That has got to be with a bullet, the number one thing that we're concerned about. We need to make sure that British Columbians are safe and that we are dealing with this pandemic, and that includes being safe, being being, I don't want to use Dr. Bonnie Henry's catchphrase, but that public servant has been, stellar, and we have done well. But the first order of business is how do we continue to be safe and keep people safe while keeping schools open, while keeping the economy moving. That's number one.
Thank you. Nicola.
So I just want to address Selena Robinson's point, which is around housing. And housing is one of the most important issues to me. Like I said before, this is why I ran in the municipal election, was around housing affordability. So I don't want folks to get the impression that that is not one of my top priorities. The reason why I say funding for education is the first thing that I would address is because funding for education is something that can be accomplished, I think, in far fewer steps than housing affordability. And that's not to say that education as a whole is a simple issue to address, but we need to look at housing from so many different angles. We've seen the NDP and the Green Party together trying to address the issue of housing affordability, and we've seen that there's so much work still to be done. So I view housing as something that is an extremely high priority item. Affordability in general is an extremely high priority item, and that's something that the BC Green Party and I take very seriously, but it requires so many different aspects, and we need to look at any possible way that we can make life more affordable for people, because affordability is getting out of hand in this province and it absolutely needs to be addressed quickly.
Any other comments from the candidates? Okay. Well, I think with that note, I'd like to thank the candidates. You know, it takes great courage to run or to run and work for office and serve your province. And I want to remind everybody to get out there and vote on the 24th, or if you have your mail-in ballots already received, fill them out. Visit elections.bc.ca to find the nearest polling station near you. But I'd like to first give the candidates 2 minutes for some closing remarks. And the speaking order is going to be the snake order. So, Will, you're going to start.
Thank you. And thank you very much for this evening. You've done a great job. We appreciate it. I know I do. I'm sure we all do. Folks, as I said off the top, for me, the calling here is do something. This we should not be sitting here. We were in a meeting earlier about Election Day where we discovered, there's almost 700,000 ballots out there that are going to be mailed in. The cost of this election to our community and to our schools, just the cost of the extra superintendents or the extra, custodian help is astronomical, according to what we heard earlier. So we shouldn't be here, but here we are. I have turned this thing around for BC Liberals in a matter of, I don't know, what is it? I can't even remember what day it is. It's like Groundhog Day every day. But I stepped up because I think it's important that we understand that this was a power grab. This election was called a year early, breaking the elections law that was created by the NDP to push us into an election during a pandemic. And I think that A, it's irresponsible. B, I don't believe that 10-year plans and promises that are long term are going to get us in action right away. That's why we're talking about a PST break. That's why we're talking about keeping seniors healthy and safe as long as they can in their own homes and moving into long-term care. That's why we're talking about eliminating small business tax. The small businesses at Austin Heights that need that tax relief that the city proposed to this government and this minister did not materialize. These things aren't going to change. We're a year ahead of an election date because there's more news coming, folks. So I ask you, please go vote on October 24th. And I appreciate you tuning in, and thank you for this.
Thank you. Selena.
Thank you. It's been an honor to represent the people of this great community, first as a city councillor and then as the MLA. I'd like to thank Nicola and Will for putting their names forward. I know that's not easy. And I want to thank the Chamber and Tri-Cities TV for their work in putting this on today. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. We certainly do live in an amazing part of the world, in a fabulous community, and what makes it a fabulous community, I believe, is the people that live in it. We work hard together to make a good life for our children, for our families, our neighbors, for our colleagues, and for our friends. And we need a government that puts these very people at the heart of every policy. It's people that make up the economy, and it's people that make up the community. We've made significant progress on childcare and on housing and on health care and on seniors care. We are investing in transit infrastructure and tackling climate change. We're investing in jobs, technology, and innovation for tomorrow. And we're revitalizing BC's traditional industries, and we're also embracing emerging sectors. Our plan is to keep moving forward for all of us. Our plan will help people get through the pandemic and ensure that everyone benefits from the economic recovery. Our plan builds on the progress we've made to improve health care, create jobs and opportunities, and make life more affordable. While Andrew Wilkinson promises tax cuts for those who need them the least, John's plan focuses on people who need help the most. Under John's plan, workers and small businesses are put at the front of our economic recovery, not the wealthy and the well-connected. It has been an honor to represent the people of Coquitlam Maillardville, and I'm asking you to send me back to the legislature, back to Victoria, to be your voice. I'm asking for you to vote for me, Selena Robinson, on October 24th. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for moderating today, for hosting, and thank you to everyone who's watching. I really appreciate having the opportunity to come here with Selena and Will. And I think what we need to focus on moving forward is having a sustainable province, in having a prosperous future. This is what the BC Green Party stands for. This is what I stand for. And I have a proven track record of creating political change. I haven't been in office, but I have created change. I have pushed at a federal and a provincial level to have gender identity and gender expression included in the BC Human Rights Code, the Canadian Human Rights Act, and the Criminal Code of Canada, which was successful. I have been the voice of the BC Greens on CBC's The Early Edition. I have been an LGBTQ2+ advocate and a housing affordability advocate. I've run for the BC Greens in the past. I've run for City Council, and I'm running again because I believe that we need change in this province. I founded the Tri-Cities Pride Society. I successfully pushed for a rainbow crosswalk in Coquitlam. Like I said, I have a proven track record of creating change. I didn't need to be in office in order to make that happen, but now I want to make even more change, and that requires that I am elected as MLA in Coquitlam, Maillardville. So on October 24th, I'm asking for you to consider voting Nicola Sperling in the BC Green Party. If you're interested in learning more about what I stand for and what the party stands for, you can visit my website at nicolasperling.me. You can visit the BC Green Party's website at bcgreens.ca. And again, I thank you for watching tonight, and I really appreciate having this opportunity. Thank you.